Welcome to LIS754 Systems Analysis and Design. We are going to continue on with our discussion of controls for interface designs. We are in the middle of a list of elements that and design criteria for data entry screens, data entry functions. We want to be able to provide users with the opportunity to confirm actions when necessary. That means that if a user can do something to damage themselves, to hurt themselves, we want to make sure they know what they're doing. When the consequences could be negative to their actions, we want them to verify that. So before you delete a record, we could put up a dialog box that says, you are about to delete this. Do you really mean to do that? Yes or no? We don't want to irritate people by having them confirm actions that they've already taken a positive step to do. So if they've clicked on the button to add a record, we can assume they want to add a record. Because it's not difficult to then remove that record if it's a problem. It's much harder to retrieve deleted data than it is to delete existing data. So we only want to make people confirm an action that they've already chosen if it could harm them. We want people to have an easy way to move from field to field, but if they want to interrupt the order, they should be able to. So if we have them, we can every time they hit enter or tab, they go to the next field. But if they want to go backwards or forwards, they can move their mouse, move the cursor with their mouse and get there. We want to provide enough functions that people can add and change and delete and view records. And we want certainly to allow people to be able to search for specific information. Input masks are templates or patterns that restrict data entry and prevent errors. And so with phone numbers, a mask would be 1, 2, 3 characters, 3 characters dash 3 characters dash 4 characters, actually numbers. Social Security is 3, 2, 4. We know these are set patterns. We know what these patterns are. We can program the data entry program to be kind to people to pre-format that number. If they don't put the dashes in and we want the dashes, our program can add those dashes. Or if we want to have parentheses around the area code in a phone number, we can do that. Organizations have specific data like account numbers, name formats, product codes. We don't want to have to force people to know our business requirements for these. We can make a mask that happens to this. So this is an example of a Social Security number. If we must, we can put a note that says format it this way, or we can put those masks on. We can have that code that will format the data for them, and it is preferred to be able to have an automatic formatting for that data for people. Once we have the data collected, we want to validate that it is good and accurate and right, before we save it to our database. So sometimes data needs to be in some kind of a predetermined sequence, and we can check for that in something called a sequence check. Often we have data that is required, and so when we want to check to make sure that that required data is available, we do an existence check. Did they fill data in that field? Yes. Or no, we put up an error message. This field is required. We like to give people an indication that that field is required. You may have noticed when you are typing in data into a web page sometimes that there's a little red asterisk, and at the bottom of the page they'll say asterisk data is required. So people will know if they want to enter that data. A data type check ensures that the data is the right type of data. So if we have an order amount, so if you're ordering pairs of shoes and you want to order 2 pairs of that shoe type, we want to force people to use a number like 2. We don't want people to put in the character A. It just doesn't make sense. So we have a specific data requirement for that field to be a number, a numerical value. We have range tests, and these can be values such as, from 1 to 100 or 1 to 1,000, or it could be a date range. We want you to put in, if you're doing for arranging flights, sometimes they'll say, what is the range for your the beginning, the date that you want to take off and the date that you want to come back, your departure date and your return date. And they'll make sure that those dates are logical. You can't return before you go, sorts of things. So that's a very straightforward check, a range check. A reasonable check is something that could happen, but it seems out of the ordinary. So if you were ordering shoes from Amazon, you might order 2 pairs, but it doesn't seem reasonable that someone would order 1,000 pairs of shoes. So you might want to ask people if that's exactly, if it's over 15 pairs, maybe you want to ask if that's a reasonable number, because people type in the wrong thing. A validity check is used for data that has to have a certain set of values, and if you have that, it's often better to actually have a drop-down list of values that you can have people pick from. So if that happens, you don't necessarily need to do the validity check. If you're asking people to type things in, you need to, but it's better to have them pick from a list if you have a certain values that you need. And then there is times when we need to check multiple fields to make sure that they're consistent or reasonable or work together, and that happens all the time. And then there are other kinds of controls. A batch control for when we want to verify batch data input. And so batch data input, so most of the work that we're going to be doing is online, but perhaps there are people who need to do some kind of a batch process. And this is when you have data that is gathered for a period of time and then scheduled to run in a background process, not in an interactive online session with a person on a weekly, monthly, daily basis. So we can think of payroll as something like that. So if you were an hourly person and you typed in your hours into a time system, or you used a time card of one sort or another, at the end of the week, all of that data would be gathered together for you and all of your coworkers, and they would be processed. School grades for the academic year are the same way. Faculty go and type in the grades, save the button, hit the button, and at some point all those grades get processed in the registrar system. Those are examples of batch. Companies use batch processes, schools use batch processes, libraries use batch processes all the time, and they're important to the process, to the well-being of a system, for data to be processed. But for our online systems that we are developing, you will be using these types of controls masks, all the different controls that we've talked about for designing your systems interfaces. Let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you soon.